All right, it's early morning. Temperature is already 80 degrees. It's not even 7 o'clock yet. 7 a.m. So usually my choices to go bike riding nowadays is this early in the morning or late in the afternoon, like around 7:30, so that the sun isn't on me. It's still pretty hot, but without the sun shining on you, it makes it bearable. So today we're going in the morning. I think the last couple of trips were in the evening. I've been riding every day, uh, mostly in the evenings. And I don't ride for like hours upon hours. I pretty much do a 5 or 6 mile ride, or maybe 30 minutes, or a little short of 30 minutes. So it's been um, fairly consistent the amount of time I go and the routes I've taken. So there hasn't been any really good places that I've been. Ever since my injury, I've been a bit afraid to go too far. Last time we were here, everything was under construction through this area. So they repaired it since then. So we're just going to ride this trail. It's about 10 miles. But we'll be doubling back on it. And it'll be interesting to see how the video turns out, because we're like in a dark area right now. I mean, it's dark to me, and I can see my flashing light pretty easily, and the street lights easily. So hopefully the camera adjusted well enough where it's nice and clear for y'all, and y'all can see everything clearly. Now, I've seen probably when I was getting ready to come here, there was probably about 10 or 12 people that had started off walking. So we should run into several people on our ride. I didn't see anybody else riding a bike, come up riding a bike or go by riding a bike. So unless somebody's already out here riding a bike, we may be the only bike riders out here. Of course, they could show up while I'm down here riding, but I'm talking about it at the time we started. This is a very nice trail. So if anybody's in this area, yeah, do this trail. This is a nice one. Not only is it pretty, if you look out there, you got the water, the rocks. Very pretty. You got this road here that's that we ride on that's wide enough for two bikes to pass each other easily. And they have lights, so they try to make it as safe as possible. Doesn't account for the suicide squirrels though, but so far they have been behaving themselves. I've got to come up with today's topic. I'm not going to continue the 10 reasons on this trip anyway. I thought I'd do something different. I had a couple of topics I wanted to talk about, so we'll probably talk about one of those too. Well, there's several topics I could talk about. I probably should just pick one, maybe a common one. Like, when it comes to buying an e-bike, what factors do you need to consider? What things do you need to take into account? Let's see. We'll call it the most important factors to consider when buying an e-bike. Okay, does that sound impressive enough? Let's see if I can follow it up with some actual ideas. Swallowed a bug. Jeez. Oh. I would say the very first thing to consider is, what do you intend to do with the e-bike? How do you plan to use it? There are so many different things you can use with an e-bike. Are you just going to use it for commuting? Is it going to be just for recreational riding? Is it going to be riding on trails? How rough are trails do you expect to go on? They have different type of models. All these different models fit different type of needs. Now, one of the first things I knew was that I wanted a multi-use e-bike so that if I wanted to go off-road, I could do it. And if I didn't go off-road, it would still ride down the road. So I could take it on trails, and I could take it. So I was looking like a e-bike that could do everything. But if you really we're not planning on going on mountain bike trails, then if you knew for sure, then eliminating that actually allows you to get a bike that more fits your needs. So hopefully you're not scatterbrained like me, and you can focus on a particular area. I think I'm going to stop drink. That bug is still bothering me. Well, there's probably nothing wrong with being broad and having something that can cover everything. I like jumping curbs. I can jump curbs. I even jump curbs when I don't want to jump curbs. So it's good to have a mountain bike that can actually do it. Since I do it sometimes when I don't want to do it. So intention doesn't really matter sometimes. Especially early on when you first get the e-bike. Yeah, I had very interesting first maybe 8 or 9 rides. I recorded most of them, so you could go back and look at them. But yeah, I definitely was not a very good e-bike rider when I first got it. I'm getting better. Still not perfect, but better. So your intended use should be the first thing you think about. Once you get the intended use down, then you can categorize your e-bikes into different types, and that'll be helpful for you not to have 100 different things to look at. You can narrow it down to 50. Anyway, let's see, what would be number 2? The second one would probably be the power of your motor. I consider that one of the most important things. And one of the things I get in comments I get in after some of my videos is comments saying, "I can't believe you didn't make it up that hill. What's the purpose of having an e-bike if you can't make it up the hill?" I thought e-bike's purposes was to make it up the hill. Well, the e-bikes help you make it up the hill. It is power assisted. It doesn't do everything. It's not like a motorcycle. So the amount of power that your motor has determines whether or not you can make it up the hill, and how easily you can make it up the hill. When I was considering it, I decided I need the most power I can possibly get, and for it to still stay a bike, still be classified as a bike, so I could ride everywhere I wanted to ride. So as I checked that out, it turned out that 750 watts was the max you could have. And since it was the max you could have, then that became the minimum I could have. So one of the criteria that I came up with pretty quickly was that I needed a mountain type bike, one that could handle off-road, so intended use. And then number 2, it needed to be as powerful as I could get, which was 750 watts. Now it turns out, and I'm not going to make this into examining motors, but it turns out that you can have 750 watts as the standard, and then it have peak power a little bit higher. So I go for those. I got 750 watts, but it can peak a little bit higher. So that peaking higher helps in the situations in which you're trying to make it up a hill. The problem with more power is that it drains the battery like crazy. So your third thing that you should look at is battery capacity. Now, I'm really big on battery capacity, as a lot of e-bikers are, because the more battery capacity you have, the further you can go. So I have 2 batteries I carry with me almost all the time. That could guarantee me anywhere between 40 miles and 80 miles, depending on the terrain and how I go about riding. So now 80 miles is probably the most I would ever go in a day. So that's a pretty distance one. So 2 batteries is all I'm going to need if I'm taking it easy. So if I stay in Power Assist 1 or Power Assist 2, I might be able to make 80 miles in a day in most terrains. Even not totally every terrain, though. Some of the mountainous areas, if I decide to go to the Rocky Mountains, that's probably not going to make it that far. But around here, which is pretty hilly, but there's no mountains like, it's just a lot of hills and some steep. You could probably make it close to 80 miles with 2 batteries. But if you only have one, which a lot of people have, then you need to. This becomes very important. So the more power you have on your motor, the less distance you're probably going to make it. So I looked at the battery capacity as an important factor because the trouble I have of riding up hills was the reason why I got e-bikes, because I couldn't ride up the hills. I just couldn't do it. As long as the ground was flat, I could ride okay, but as soon as we came across a hill, I couldn't make it up, and then I couldn't walk either. So once I couldn't make it up the hill, what do I do? Yeah, that was a problem, and that's the reason I didn't do any mountain bike riding over the last few years, because I just couldn't do it. E-bike opened up that opportunity for me, so now I'm able to go. So when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking I need to get as much power as possible so I can make it up the hills. Now, even with the power that I have, there are hills around here I still can't make it up. And some hills that are a little bit hard to make it up, but I can make it up if I plan ahead and get into the right gear and, huff and puff, and I can make it up those hills. They're strenuous, tough on me, but I can do it. I need a lot more powerful motor to make it up these hills easily, but that reclassifies my e-bike, so I don't want to do that. I want to stick with 750 as the max. Your state may be different, but I was trying to pick something that would be pretty consistent among all states. So if I take this to Georgia or take it to North Carolina, it pretty much follows the same patterns that it does here in this state. So you should consider that when you're doing it. So obviously we got the intended use. Secondly, we're looking at how much power your motor's going to have. Now, if you're doing commuting, frequently 350 watts is plenty for a lot of commuting situations. If you're in areas that doesn't have gigantic hills, yeah, you could probably still do it. The commuting bikes frequently have about 300 watts, 350 watts. And videos that I've watched, I've seen people go up some pretty big hills with that much, because they're tuned differently. Usually they don't have the 4-inch tires. They have less than that. Tires get pumped up to a little bit more pressure, and therefore helps it roll easier. So all those things combined, you're able to get by with 350 watts that you can't do it on the mountain fat tire e-bikes. Just a little too hard. And the weight. The weight on the mountain e-bikes are like 85 pounds, and you can get commuting bikes down to about 35 pounds. So that's going to help you a whole lot more making it up some hills. So your intended use, how much motor power you have, the battery capacity. You want a battery that's going to last however far you're going to go. So that may end up changing how you look at your e-bike. So when I was looking at deciding my e-bike, and the reason I went with Aventon Adventure was because it met all of my requirements. All my requirements that I had was met by the Aventon Adventure. But that was for me. Now, Aventon has several different types of bikes. But the Adventure was my bike. I could tell almost immediately that that's the one I wanted. I went ahead and looked around at other bikes, other mountain e-bikes, and I still ended up settling on the Aventon Adventure because it just met all my requirements, every single one of them. There were some things I did not know that I probably should have considered. But maybe I could do that for another video. But that's not going to be our video now. So your battery capacity is very important. And so when you're considering it, you need to make sure you get a battery capacity that's going to handle what you're looking for and what you're able to, what you want to try to accomplish. Okay, now that we got through 3, what follows up almost immediately and is totally related to battery capacity and motor power is range. How far do you want to go? So if you're commuting and your commuting job is only like 10 miles away or less, that's going to require a different bike than if you're trying to conquer a mountain on an e-bike. So the range that you're looking for is going to be different. Some people, I watched one video series on YouTube where a guy, Biking Brian, went from Illinois to Colorado on an e-bike. Yeah, you're going to need a lot of battery capacity to make it that far. So he had some really good range. And he built his own special battery in order to be able to make it there. Now he had a lot of ways to fill up and make it, but that's extreme. Most of us are not going to ever have that type of e-bike ride. But still, a range that you're going to be expecting to use, and more than likely, you might as well double whatever you think. If you haven't been riding an e-bike and you're going to say, oh, I'm going to ride it for like 5 miles a day, yeah, once you get started, you'll find out that you're having fun, and you're going to go more than 5 miles a day. 10 miles a day, easily. One of the things that stops me from going like 25 miles is my wrist. My wrists start hurting after I don't know, 10, 15 miles. So I try to keep it so I don't go more than 15 miles most of the time. Now I do have times I've gone 40 miles, and I have to watch that's how come I know my wrist hurt. Because I've done long mileage before. So I've done 40 miles twice on one battery. So one time I was panicked, but yeah, there was the second time I had a second battery, so it wasn't that big of a deal. I always carry a second battery with me just in case. So that's part of how you're going to determine range. If you're going to be a little bit like me, where you're going to be riding 30 to 40 miles. Now, I didn't think I'd be ever riding 30 or 40 miles when I first got my bike. But yeah, I learned very quickly that That is a possibility. I mean, I'm sitting here at home saying, you know, I could get in my car and tow my bike over to this area and ride, or I could just ride over there and then ride in that area. And so to ride over there is like 20 miles away. And so I'm thinking, you know, just going there and back is going to be 40 miles, and then I'm going to ride 10 miles when I get there. You know, I'm covering a lot of mileage. Uh, I would have never thought I would have done that. And the only reason I'm able to do that is because I learned that I can do it. You know, sometimes when you learn you can do something, you do it. When I first got the e-bike, I thought if I could make it 5 miles, I would be doing good. That would be a really far distance for me. Now that's my minimum. I never get on my bike and ride less than 5 miles. That's like a barely getting going number. But it does give you exercise. So I always make sure I do the 5 or 6 miles because it's good exercise. And I try to get that in every day. But when I try to go for a ride, when I'm planning a ride, those are usually a lot higher. No, their minimums are like 10 miles. That'd be the minimum of a planned ride that I mapped out. And it will probably end up at 35-ish. So somewhere between 10 and 35 miles is pretty typical of my rides that are planned. And it used to be I planned all my rides. Now I'm planning less of them. So range is very important. And one of the things I notice is that some e-bikes out there are beginning to get a lot of range. There are some that are. Saw one the other day that I looked at. It's very impressive. Kind of makes me want to buy it just because of range. Claims it can do 120 miles. Now, do I expect I'm going to do 120 miles? No, I'm not going to do 120 miles. But they're probably exaggerating. So I said, well, even if they didn't do 120, and instead it does 60, that'd be cool to be able to know you can rely on the bike to get you 60 miles. So I watched some reviews and some range tests on it, and even the 60 miles is a little iffy. You can make it 60 miles, but it was a little iffy for the guy that was testing, or one of the people I watched that tested the range. He was riding in a hilly area like me, and he kind of quit around 55, 56. And so for a bike that's rated at 120, I thought that was kind of short. So you got to be a little careful. Don't believe the manufacturer ranges. You need to watch some of the YouTubers and when they do an actual range test. There's probably enough out there for whichever bike it is that you're looking at. Go find it and see what the actual range is. And of course, the range will vary greatly still. So all you can do is see if their riding style is similar to yours and if their terrain's similar to yours. So it makes it a little bit harder if you can't find a rider like that that's on the bike that you're looking at getting. But you can only do what you can do. So frequently you could do something that I've found out is that if you have a rider, a reviewer who rides the same type of style and terrain that you ride in, and they have a bike that's rated at 40 miles and they get like 28, you might be able to use that same ratio in order to determine, at least to give you a ballpark for the bike that you're looking at to see if that ratio works for you. So once you decide on the range of your bike and you find it, you have to make sure you get the right battery, the right capacity. You have to get the right power. So you have to make sure. That's the reason I worked on those lists. You have to find your power. So frequently you'll find out you get better range if you move down to 350 watts. But the reason you settled on, or at least the reason I had 750 to start with, that was a reason. So I can't go to 350, or the reason I was settled on 750 would be defeated. And therefore, some things I wanted to do, I would not be able to do. So you get your motor power. Once you decide whatever size that's going to be, and you decide on your battery capacity, then you move to range. And while maintaining to see what bike you can find that has the right motor the right battery capacity, and the type of range that it has once you get the other two established. So there are some out there, some e-bikes that are 750 watts that has that are big batteries. They're 750 watts, but the battery capacity is greater than 20 amps even. So you're able to go further on those. So if that's your main goal, you would look at those bikes. That's a possibility. You still get your 750 watts. You still get the power that you need, but the battery is just bigger. And getting to range, I know it's going to be a little hard to decide on range, and most likely you're going to underestimate it. It's going to be hard to overestimate it. Passing on your left. Okay, thank you. Hello, dog. I underestimated it greatly. I thought that 5 miles would be the best I could do, and it turns out that's not even close. And then later, I watched a lot of other people's videos, and some of those people were saying the same thing, that they thought that a bike that could go 30 miles would satisfy their needs. And now they find out that they have 2 or even 3 batteries because they drive a lot more than 30 miles when they go out for a ride. So you're going to be surprised. You're going to be surprised how much you enjoy the ride and therefore don't want to stop, and you only end up just going much further than you thought you would ever be going. So one of the advantages is that you can add another battery to almost all the e-bikes. Not all of them, though. But a lot of them you can carry an extra battery, and they have a quick change out. I had one of my videos about 3 videos ago. I decided to show the entire time it takes to change a battery, just so people would know how long it takes to change a battery out. Before then, I changed it out a few times, but I just cut it out of the video. But I decided I probably should leave it in at least one video so people can see how long it takes. It doesn't take that long, but it's not instantaneous either. So once you get all these other things settled, then you need to work on frame size. Frame size is important because if you're short or tall, the different size frames won't fit you as well. Now, some of the frame sizes says that they all start at 5'3" and go to 6'2". Now, I'm suspicious of those. Now, technically, maybe they can go to 6'2", but if you see how it works, it doesn't seem very stable. It doesn't, I don't like those. So I like the ones that are closer to my range. So I'm 5'11", so if I got something that says we got a frame size here that goes from 5'11" to 6'2", that's a fairly short distance, and therefore I know that frame size and the seating, the handlebars, and everything are gonna probably fit me pretty well, as opposed to something that has a bigger range that goes from 5'2" to 6'2". I've seen those bikes, and I guess technically, a 6'2" person can get on them, but if I was a 6'2" person, I wouldn't get on them.
Oh, shit.
Right.
That water.
So you just, technically versus practically are different things. So when you're looking at frame size, that's going to be important. Don't get one that's too small for you. But at the same time, don't get something that's too big for you. when I was working with the Aventon Adventure, I was trying to decide whether I wanted a medium or a large. A large started at 5'11", and a medium um, ended at 5'11". I think it was. I think that was right, or maybe it went to 6 or something. But when I looked at it, I said, well, I probably should go with large. Of course, once you think of large, large is going to be heavier, and large is going to fit less people, because more than likely you don't know that many people that are over 6'2". Most of them are shorter than that you know. So if you're going to have your friends riding your bike, yeah, they're not going to be able to get on a large frame e-bike. It's going to be pretty specific to you. So I ended up going for medium when I got mine, and it worked out just fine. The handlebars were a little bit low once I got it up to the tallest setting, so I ended up having to get a something that raises the handlebars a little bit so that I could actually not put so much pressure onto the handlebars, because that was creating issues with my wrist. So you got those types of problems, and so but I'm still happy I went with medium, because a larger frame would have been harder to get on also, and when you get older, it gets harder and harder to decide what method to get onto your bike. So when you're a kid, you're able to get on a bike by swinging your legs over easily. But as you get older, it's harder and harder to swing them legs over. So the frame size is very important, and there's probably lots of places where you can go ride bikes with a 20-inch wheel, small frame, where you put your seat up really high in order to and get out and ride it and see if you can handle that type of a situation. If you're 5'11" like me and you're weighing 250 pounds, do you want to be on a small frame 20-inch wheel bike? Some of them allow you to have 300 pounds, but if you're weighing 255, you're already getting a good part of the capacity. If you're carrying an extra battery, that's going to get you up to 300 pounds with other things you're carrying, your pump and repair kits and stuff, that you get over 300 pounds fairly quickly. So things to be careful for. You just need to watch out on your frame size. It's going to be important, and so you need to watch it and make sure you get the right size for you. And if doubtful, please go to some places and try them out. One of the things I did not take into consideration at all, that I should have taken into consideration, is weight. I didn't really think much about weight. Now, the bike I got is like 85 pounds. And so I'm thinking, yeah, but since I'm battery powered, I'm not pushing myself up the hills, so the weight doesn't matter. So I discarded weight. Let me tell you, don't do that. The problem you're going to have is not riding it up a hill. It's when you stop. It's when you go. It's when you're trying to turn a corner at like 3 miles per hour. Weight becomes an extremely large factor at that point, and whether or not you tip over, whether you fall, whether you can actually make the turn or not. When you're riding some trails, even the trail I'm riding today, there are some sharp turns. And the heavier your bike, the better balance you've got to learn how to handle in order not to tip yourself over. Because once you're, depending on how strong you are, once your bike starts getting off balance, you got like 85 pounds of weight, more. In my case, it's about 110. I got like 110 pounds of weight that I have to wrestle with in order to get under control once I lose the balancing factor. So I've lost that wrestling match a couple of times. It has overwhelmed me. So I focus fairly strongly on when I'm making U-turns, when I'm making really sharp turns, some sharper than U-turns, to maintain my balance and my weight in the proper spot so that I don't start tipping and have to hope I can hold the bike up. Because I realize 110 pounds is hard to hold up for me. And I'm a pretty big person, so some other people might have even a much tougher time. So you don't want to tip over. So consider the weight of the e-bike. Obviously, if you're getting a bigger frame, it's going to weigh more. And if you're getting bigger tires and bigger everything else, they're all going to weigh more. So that's going to have to be part of your consideration. So the weight also you have to consider when you're trying to put it up on your bike stand. Something I never even thought about. Never even thought about putting it up on a bike stand. How much weight? Now you can take the battery off and get the 85-pound e-bike down to about 60 pounds. And it makes it a lot easier to get it on the bike stand. But you need to take that in consideration. In order to transport it, you're going to have to get it up on a rack. That's going to mean you're going to add a lot of weight. Are you going to be able to handle that? I'm pretty sure that a 5'2" female, most of them anyway, would not be able to pick my bike up and put it on the ramp that'll carry my bike from place to place on. I wouldn't even consider asking somebody to do that, because if they just get it overbalanced just slightly in one direction or other, they're going to be flattened by the bike. So yeah, you need to consider the weight. The weight's going to be very important for lots of things. Transporting it, stopping, starting. Both of those, especially if you're on a hill, it's even worse. I learned the hard way that stopping on a hill and not having your bike balanced correctly will result in falling over. You're just going to fall over because that's just going to happen. It's too much weight. I didn't consider all these things when I was doing it. When I got a different bike, I really like my Aventon Adventure, so I'm not sure I would have got a different bike, but I would have looked for that as an additional requirement had I thought about these issues, and see if I could have found something that would be better fit for me. I don't know if I could have, but since I didn't even consider it, I didn't look for that in a factor of any of my bike decisions. But now that I know, I'm letting you know that you need to consider it. One of the things that I thought, without a doubt, was very important is stopping. I wanted to be able to stop as quickly as possible. So when I looked at mechanical brakes, the first thing I thought is this thing weighs. With me on it, I got 255 pounds of me, plus 100 pounds, 110 pounds of bike and accessories. I don't want to be relying on a mechanical brake. I just did not think that was going to be good enough to stop. So stopping is important. Stopping quickly when you need to is important. So you need to get the best brakes that you can find. Don't pay $200 less for a bike that's going to give you the mechanical brakes. It's just not worth it. Now, if your bike weighs 35 pounds, it might be doable. But for the most part, e-bikes are weighing over 50 pounds. It's just, get the better brakes. Get the hydraulic brakes, hydraulic disc brakes, so that you stop. It's been a very nice day today. It's really nice, yeah.
I hope it stays like like that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Now, I don't know a whole lot about different qualities of brakes. I can't tell you what's the best brake or the worst brake. I don't have that knowledge yet. But if the biking company went to all the trouble to make sure they have hydraulic brakes, I think you've met the minimum requirements there. One of the things I did look at when considering the bike was suspension. Now, I did not. Man, that bug bothers me forever. Hey. He's still being aggressive.
Have a good day.
I did not know everything about suspension then, and I don't now either. However, I know more now than originally. Originally, I was looking at making sure I had good hydraulic suspensions in the front and that I had good suspensions in the back. And that's all I was looking for. If it had suspensions in the front and suspensions in the back, that was good enough. I'm ready to go with it. Yeah, since then, I've learned that I probably needed to spend a little bit more time learning about suspension and how it fits with different e-bikes. Since I had planned to take this on mountain bike trails and have taken it on mountain bike trails, suspension turned out to be a little bit more important than my original plans were, my original thought process was. So if you are looking at doing that, you might want to do a little bit more study into type of suspensions. Now, like I said, I'm not trying to get into details on it in this thing. One of the troubles I have is I end up spending 20 minutes talking about some of the details that we end up not covering all the topics. As in my 10 methods of why traditional... I'll pass you on the left here. Bikes are not as good as e-bikes, and I'm only up to 7 after three rides. Tells you that I can get carried away with details. So I'm trying to avoid any details here. But just to know that suspension should be something you should consider. There are all sorts of different types of suspensions out there depending on where you're riding. It's less important if you're riding on the streets, and a lot more important if you're planning on riding on mountain bike trails. The next grouping, we're going to look at tires. I didn't know what tires I wanted, but I like the idea of having fat tires. I just like it. I said they would be more cushiony. They'll be able to hit like a rock and be able to go over it. Be able to run into roots and be able to survive just fine without bending my rim or anything. So I was pretty much sold on fat tire e-bikes before I even knew anything about fat tire e-bikes. I just like the concept in my brain. Now I knew that if you put less air in your tire, it's going to affect performance. But at the same time, it's going to give you a little bit better cushiony ride if you're going over a lot of bumps and stuff, like if you're in a trail. Going at 15 psi as you travel a trail is more comfortable and for you than being at 30 psi going on a trail. If you're on the road, though, 15 psi just has served no purpose. There is not a reason to do that I can tell. You need to be up there closer to the above 25, 30. And you need to have less tire on the road, because with less tire on the road, that's going to give you an easier pedaling time. And it's going to get you more e-bike mileage. The battery's going to last longer and you'll have it better. So you don't want a big fat tire if you're riding on the road most of the time, because it's going to be counterproductive as far as adding too much resistance to the road that uses more battery power. So you'll want the skinnier tires. I don't know if I'd go down to like a inch and a half. I don't know if I'd go that low. Maybe 2 inches, an inch and 3/4 maybe, but 2.5 inches. See, I start talking myself up. So I'm not sure where I'd end up going if I was going to go with a commuting bike. But definitely it wouldn't be using 4-inch tires for that. So depending on your intended use, as we had talked about at the very beginning, that's going to determine what type of tires you're going to want to have. You don't want to have skinny tires if you're going to be spending most of your time, or any time, on mountain bike trails, because they're rough. You know, just tear your skinny tires up. And let's see, I think we're up to 10. If this is 10, we'll call this the last one because of the nice round number of 10. I can probably come up with others, but price. Now, I was kind of saying, okay, what I was going to go with is an e-bike that cost around $2,000. That's what I was looking at. Now, I ended up spending a lot more than $2,000 because you first buy your bike, and then you start buying accessories, and then you end up buying a second battery, and the next thing you know, you spent $3,000. So you might want to be aware of that you're probably going to spend more than what you think you're going to spend. At least that was my case. I spent like $1,000 more than I thought I was going to spend when I got the bike. So you're starting at least $1,500 and going up to about $2,500. You just have to spend time. Once you get the intended use, what type of motor, oh good, thank you, power you need, how much battery capacity you want, how far you want to go, whether you need 2 batteries or more, type of frame, how much weight the bike's going to be, and what size you can handle, what type of brakes you got, and what type of suspension you need. Once you know what those things are and you start putting them all together, they're going to come up with only certain bikes that even meet that requirement. So they're not going to be the 1,200 bikes, most likely. If you have much criteria at all, you're going to find out that once you move to hydraulic brakes, for example, you're up to $1,400, $1,500 bikes. Now, I probably should mention this. Now, I can't have a number 11, so we'll just mention this as an appended A, is the speeds that you have on your bike. You don't want to ghost pedal. That ghost pedaling means you're pedaling, but you don't feel any resistance, and the bike's just going forward on its own with the power. I don't like that. I like feeling like I'm helping the bike, the motor out. I want to be helping the motor.
Ring.
So that's just an appendant to this. It doesn't have anything to do with the top 10 reasons, but you should consider it anyway. That's an important factor. For me, it was an important factor, very important factor. And I see a lot of other people saying they dislike it and are trying to modify their bike in some way to handle that issue. So probably you should start off handling that issue with the purchase of your bike to make sure it is not going to be ghost pedaling you when you're going 25 miles per hour. Okay, so I think that we covered everything, and we did it all in one episode. I didn't have to spread this on multiple episodes. That's awesome. So that definitely deserves a like and a subscribe. So don't forget, like it, subscribe. Thank you.